Well, you know, something that we have discussed often is, are the Democrats weak or are they complicit? We've discussed this in terms of the media as well. Do they not know what they're doing or are they complicit? Well, Glenn Greenwald of Salon.com has written an interesting article about it, and we brought him on here to discuss it. Glenn, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Great to be back.
Now, of those two theories, I suppose it's possible that both are true, but you're leaning towards complicit in regards to this healthcare reform debate. Tell me why.
Well, the division that has broken down is really one between wanting to continue to protect the interests of the private health insurance industry by ensuring that they have no real competition, that they can keep costs as high as possible, and that essentially they'll end up having 50 million new customers as a result of these mandates that force uninsured people to buy their products. And yet at the same time, in the absence of a public option, there'll be no competition to lower their prices. So it's essentially, that's the version of events that would be a huge boon. It would basically be an enormous bailout to the health insurance industry. And the other side is in the interest of the consumer, which is to say that the whole premise of healthcare reform in the first place was that healthcare costs are far too high, that the costs are increasing and will be unsustainable. And the only way to control costs is to have a public plan that serves as an alternative to the public, so that if the health insurance industry continues to gouge people, there'll be this public plan that can offer reasonable prices and keep the insurance industry honest. And clearly the media has sided with the people who are serving the interests of the health insurance industry by depicting the debate as one between reasonable centrists in the middle who are conscious about costs and don't want a public plan, and unreasonable, ideologically rigid leftists who are childishly attached to the public option and are, by refusing to give it up, impeding getting anything done. And it's clear what side the media is on by embracing that narrative.
Now, yeah, in the case of the media in this particular issue, I think that it's partly because they're lazy and scared. They don't know what the public action would actually do, because that would require them to think about it a little bit. And they don't trust themselves when they do think, probably for good reason. And they're afraid that if they say that it makes sense, of course the Republicans will jump down their throats. So, you know, I understand that a little bit in this case. How about the Democrats, though? The Democrats claim, hey, look, you know what, we really want this thing, but the Republicans aren't going to vote for it. But then you say, wait a minute now, don't you guys have an overwhelming majority in the House, the White House, and 60 Democratic senators? So what's stopping them from simply saying, all right, let's do the public option?
Well, that, I think, is the real point, which is that from the beginning, the Democrats continuously were compromising and negotiating against themselves by diluting the plan that President Obama ran on and won on. And when they were asked why they were doing that, the answer was, well, because we want to get Republican votes. We think it's important that this pass on a bipartisan basis. Now, anybody who has been remotely conscious over the last year knows that the last thing this Republican Party is going to do is join in with the Democrats and help Barack Obama pass a health care plan that will cement his legacy and be very politically profitable to him. Of course they're going to impede it. They're going to destroy it. They're going to sabotage it, just like they did in 1994. Now, if you and I know that, certainly the Democrats in Congress know that the idea of trying to get Republican support was an illusion, a myth from the beginning. So that leads to the question, well, then why then, if that wasn't the reason, if trying to get Republican support wasn't why the Democrats kept diluting their proposal, what was the real reason? I think it's very clear. The Democrats, as much as the Republicans, in fact over the last couple of years more so, are the recipients of enormous amounts of money from the health insurance industry and the drug industry. And not only are they the recipients of all that money, what they're actually afraid of is that if they get behind a plan, if the Democratic Party gets behind a plan that the health insurance industry and the drug insurance industry hate, which is a public option or negotiating for bulk lower prices on drugs, on pharmaceutical products, then what's going to happen is those industries will not only stop funding the Democratic Party, they'll pour all of their money into the Republican Party in order to try and replicate what happened in 1994 when the Republicans took over Congress. And they need to keep the health insurance industry and the drug industry happy, and that's why they're diluting their bill, because the insurance industry doesn't want a public option.
So you're saying that the Democrats saying, oh, well, we got to have the Republican support is a pretext for actually selling out the public option to make more money from the healthcare industry. So, well, that would mean that instead of the battle being over who's going to reform the industry more, the real battle is between the Democrats and the Republicans as to who's going to help the industry more, so that that money will then be funneled back into their campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a battle between who can continue to be the rewarded servants of industry. I mean, when the Republicans had control over the Congress, and when the Republicans controlled the White House throughout the entire last decade, all of that K Street money and all of the lobbyist money and all of the corporate money flowed into Republican coffers. That's what Jack Abramoff was doing. It was a huge, vast infrastructure. And if you look at who funded Barack Obama's campaign and who has been funding the Democrats in Congress since they took over the majority, it's the very same industries that were funding the Republicans before. These industries don't care Democrat or Republican. They don't care what the differences are between them on some social level or anything else. What they care about is ensuring that they continue to control these parties. And, you know, what was interesting was during the attempt to regulate the banking industry that caused the financial crisis, and try and impose some very modest limits on executive compensation for banks that were receiving public funds, Dick Durbin came out and said, look, the reason we're not going to get anything done is because even though they've just destroyed the entire economy, the banks own the Congress. That's the number 2 Democrat in the Senate who said that. That's just the reality of how it is, and both parties feel like their survival depends upon being obedient servants to these industries, and you certainly see that going on with the healthcare debate.
All right, now let's take it to the next level, though. How many of the Democrats are on board, right? Because if you tell me Max Baucus and Kent Conrad and Ben Nelson are controlled by the industry that funnels them millions of dollars a year and are using the Republicans as a pretext to kill the public option when they really want to serve the healthcare industry, I believe it. Okay, I believe that 100%. That's what I've been arguing on the show. Now, but you do have real progressives in the Congress. How come they're not controlled by the same people, or are they?
Well, no. I mean, that's what is turning out to be the war here, and that's why, in my view, this is such an important battle, even more important than what the outcome is of specific healthcare policy questions themselves. It's because generally what happens is there is a real progressive caucus, a real progressive faction in the Congress, much more so in the House than the Senate. In the Senate, you can count them on one hand, maybe 2 hands. But in the House, they're a real block. There's 90 members of Congress who are identifiable progressives. Probably 60 or so of them belong to the Progressive Caucus loyally. And if it's true that no Republicans support the health care bill, you cannot have the progressives in Congress oppose what you do and hope to get it passed. Now, generally, any more than you can have the Blue Dogs of the bloc oppose it. Now, generally what happens is the progressives are told that they're the ones being obstructionists, that they're going to bring harm to the party, that they need to compromise and stop being so ideological. And at the end of the day, enough progressives get on board with whatever they're told the party leadership wants them to do, and things pass. That happened recently with the war supplemental bill, where progressives made noises about not giving their votes to enable it to pass, and at the last minute, enough of them did it. So now the question is, 60 of them have signed a letter saying, if there is no public option, we are voting no on the bill. And if they adhere to that pledge, which they've put in writing, and they've even done it on video, the blog Fire Doc Lake has gotten many of them on video saying a no vote if there's no public option, then the bill can't pass. And for once, the people's interests can actually be heard and served in Congress, and let the Blue Dogs or the centrist Democrats in the Senate filibuster health care reform if that's really what they want to do, but make sure there's a public option in there.
But Glenn, now we come to the central question, and we're talking to Glenn Greenwald of Salon.com, and he wrote a piece on this called Why the Healthcare Debate is So Important Regardless of One's View of the Public Option. And I agree with you, and I wrote something regarding how the public option is the litmus test for Barack Obama, not because of the healthcare issue, and not because of policy or a litmus test of how liberal he is, by no stretch. No, it's a litmus test of whether he's going to go for the moneyed interests or he's actually going to try for real change. And that will determine what he does on energy and all the other bills. So that's the central question. Why is Obama seemingly on the side of the lobbyists when he said he ran his whole campaign against them?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. In my view, if you look at what Obama's campaign was about, any more than and much more than a specific position on a particular issue. This is my plan on energy, or my plan on healthcare, or my plan on civil liberties, or whatever. much more central, much more overriding than that was this pledge about changing the way Washington works, which means that bills will no longer be written by lobbyists and by the industries that have vested interest in their outcome and override the interest of ordinary citizens. Instead, lobbyists were going to be excluded, their influence was going to be limited, and instead the outcome was going to be a much fairer process, one that has all the voices heard. And so if on one of the most important issues of his campaign, healthcare reform, he takes the plan that he constantly touted when he was running and that he was elected on, and that he's been since saying was vital, which is the public option, and dispenses with it in order to please the health insurance industry that was supposedly the culprit here, I think you're absolutely right. That means that he is not willing to fulfill his central pledge of changing the way Washington works. I mean, if he's not willing to fulfill his health care reform commitment at the expense of the health insurance industry, and he's willing only to serve their interests, the way he did, it seems, the drug companies by secretly agreeing that he wouldn't negotiate for lower prices as part of this bill. If he does that with the health insurance industry, when won't he do that? When will he ever stand up to industry and lobbyist influence and change the way Washington works? I think the reasonable answer would be he's never going to if he doesn't do it here.
Glenn, I got to ask the next question, which is a harsh question. It could go either way now, and we're not saying that he is going to ditch the public option. But right now, it looks like he's going in that direction. He's already cut deals with industry. He's constantly talking to the Finance Committee, not really talking to any of the other committees. If he throws the public option under the bus when he's clearly legislatively does not have to, he has the 60 Democratic senators, let alone if they go through reconciliation and only need 51. If he does that, is he a fraud?
Well, I mean, for the reason that we just said, he's at the very least guilty of purposely leaving his central campaign promise unfulfilled. Now, it's a harsh word to say that he's a fraud, but I mean, I think a reasonable case could be made. You want us to remember that the person who seems to be at the center of all the strategizing is Rahm Emanuel, who, of course, built his base of influence in the Congress by making the Democratic Party expand its majority, not by electing progressives to Congress, but by electing blue dogs, and by making the agenda be as compliant as possible with industry interests, so that the Democratic Party became the recipient of industry largesse. And it seems like Obama is following that path. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but when all administration officials come out at the same time and suddenly announce that the public option is really not that important, it's just a detail, it's a sliver of healthcare reform, we'd like to have it, but we don't actually need it, we can have a great plan without it, it seems pretty obvious that they are on their way, well on their way, publicly even, let alone privately, to renouncing the public option, and I don't think there's any other conclusion that one can draw.
We're going to have to leave it right there. We're out of time. Glenn Greenwald from Salon, thank you as always. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks.